What's wrong, buddy? They don't dirty. Did you for real do that, or did you just tell him that? We both did. What did y'all do?
This is the exact moment when Sharon Clay, the mother of Tyler Edmonds, would realize that her 13-year-old son was hiding a shocking secret.
It's not easy to believe that somebody that looks like him committed this crime.
I heard it been locked and I looked at it and saw that it actually hit him.
How do you know that it hit you?
I saw some blood. It was on the pillow I did. Something like, they didn't go off and said, what did I do?
I was so convinced that he was innocent that I was overly confident that he would be found innocent.
She asked me for a gun that she wanted to kill Joey.
I had hoped that she would tell the truth about what had happened after she had already gotten a life sentence. And I thought, she's got nothing to lose, maybe she'll tell the truth.
Christy Fulgham is called to the stand. She sits down on the witness stand. We're at the edge of our seats.
The boy sitting inside the interrogation room was 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds, who was arrested on May the 11th, 2003 for murdering his sister's husband, Joey Fulgham. Both he and his sister were arrested for the crime. Tyler eventually admitted to committing the crime with his sister. Yet, shockingly, a few days after his arrest, the teen claimed to be solely responsible for pulling the trigger and shooting his sister's husband. Detectives, however, were skeptical of Tyler's recount of events. This was because after Tyler's interrogation, detectives were left with even more questions than answers. Detectives noted some discrepancies in his story, and things just didn't seem to be adding up. In the peaceful town of Starkville, Mississippi, Tyler Edmonds was living a happy and content life with his mother.
Tyler and my daughter went through school together till the 8th grade when this happened. He was a very bright, intelligent child, very sweet.
Oh, he was precious. He was blonde-headed and just had the sweetest face. I had the biggest crush on him. You know, he was a lot of fun.
Tyler's parents were divorced, and his mother was not really supportive of him visiting his father.
I think his parents were divorced, and it was fairly acrimonious, and he didn't have a lot of opportunity to see his father.
But young Tyler wanted to build a relationship with his father like the one he shared with his mother, and there was one person who was ready to help Tyler with this mission, his half-sister, Christy Fulgham. Tyler and Christy shared an unbreakable bond, and Tyler was really fond of his half-sister. Christy would help Tyler to meet with his father against his mother's wishes, and Tyler was always grateful for Christy's help.
I had asked Tyler one weekend if he wanted to hang out that weekend, but he told me he couldn't. He was so excited he was going to his sister's house. It was kind of like a big event in his life, was going to his sister's house for the weekend. I can remember him saying that she was kind of his only family.
Christy lived nearby Tyler's house with her husband and 3 children, and the 2 half-siblings were very close. On May the 11th, 2003, Christy was planning a Mother's Day picnic with her children and her half-brother Tyler, since her husband had plans to visit his own family. However, no one expected the sudden, horrific turn of events that took place. It was May the 11th, 2003, a day when people in all of the U.S. were celebrating Mother's Day with their mothers and the rest of the family. Joey Fulgham had similar plans for the day, but when he didn't turn up for the family gathering that was planned by the Fulgham household, his parents knew something was wrong because Joey would never miss such an important event.
On Saturday, Joey was supposed to go to an air show. He didn't show up. And it just was not like him not to show up. And then the next day was Mother's Day. And he didn't show up for Mother's Day. And at that point, they knew something was wrong.
The family decided to go to the place where Joey was living with his wife Christy and their 3 kids, but the scene that greeted them after entering the house shocked them completely. Joey was lying on his bed. He looked as if he could have just been in a deep sleep, were it not for the bullet in his head and blood spilling on the covers. His parents dialed 911 immediately, and officers rushed to the scene at once.
Well, I was at home, and I got a call from the deputies who had responded, and they called me to the scene. Joe was in the bedroom on the south side of the house, and he was in the bed, and he was laying on his stomach, and he had been shot in the back of the head. Didn't look like he ever moved when he got shot, to me, in my opinion.
Once Joey Fulgham was officially declared dead after the fatal shooting into his head, an investigation began right away to capture the one responsible for the murder. The detectives decided to start with the Fulgham family, who were all present at the crime scene. His parents talked about how kind-hearted and loving he was, and that he'd never made any enemies in his life. However, when Joey's brother was interrogated by the detectives, he told them that he could take a guess as to who committed this atrocious crime.
He was emotional, but he wasn't ranting and raving. It's just a matter of fact. It's something that happened to his brother, and he felt like he knew who did it.
That person, his brother said, was none other than Christy Fulgham. The police started looking for Christy immediately, and it didn't take them long to find out that she was staying with her mother in Little Rock, Mississippi.
We found her in Little Rock, Mississippi at her mother's house. Well, I sent men to Little Rock, Mississippi and talked to her that night.
When Christy heard the news, she broke down into tears immediately. The detectives decided to interview her about the events that went down the day that Joey was killed, and indeed, they found enough circumstantial evidence to secure a warrant for her arrest. However, before they could arrest her, she voluntarily showed up at the sheriff's office at Starkville. Christy told the detectives that she was willing to cooperate and tell them everything that had happened on May 10th, 2003. She told detectives that she'd planned a picnic with her family and Tyler, her half-brother. Tyler frequently visited their place to spend time with his sister, and that day was no different. While Tyler was conversing with Christy, she told him that Joey had hit her for no apparent reason, and she was being physically and verbally abused. Tyler was enraged. He couldn't digest the fact that his sister, who he adored so much, was facing something so horrible. So later that night, on May 10th, 2003, Tyler waited for Joey to go to bed. When Joey was fast asleep, Tyler crept into his bedroom, raised a rifle, and killed Joey with a single gunshot to the back of his head. After Christy had claimed that her little brother had killed her husband, Tyler was arrested the very next day and brought into the interrogation room for questioning. In the beginning, Tyler denied any involvement related to the murder of Joey Fulgham. He kept insisting that he could never do such a thing, but after a while, something happened that changed the course of the investigation entirely.
The investigators say point blank to Tyler, Christy says you did it. He doesn't believe it. So officers bring Christy into the room. Christy says, Tyler, tell him what happened. At that point, after she leaves, Tyler's story begins to shift.
Tyler finally told the detectives that it was him who killed Joey Fulgham. The detectives wondered how a 13-year-old could come up with such a plan and execute it perfectly. A little later into the interrogation, Tyler decided to finally reveal the full story. He said it wasn't solely him who killed Joey. Christy, his half-sister, was in on it too. It was all her idea, and she was the one who planned out the whole murder.
I haven't done it like this. My man was sitting on what kind of gun, buddy? I'm not sure what brand, but she's 22. There's all the object that he put on because he killed Joey.
Tyler confessed that on May the 11th, both he and Christy entered the bedroom where Joey was fast asleep with a motive to kill him. Tyler raised the rifle, but couldn't steady it to shoot the shot. Seeing this, Christy came to help him, and they both pulled the trigger together, shooting a single bullet to the back of Joey's head.
I heard it go off, and I looked at it and saw that it actually hit him. How do you know that it hit him? I saw some blood. It was on the pillow, I did. Something like, just a little sprinkle on it, got the blood. And then, then it really go off, and I said, well, yeah, I did.
The detectives finally got their confession from the 13-year-old boy who killed his sister's husband.
This was what investigators were looking for. They have the confession now, even though there's some discrepancy between Christy's version and Tyler's version. They have a confession. They're on solid ground.
Even though there were some inconsistencies in confessions given by Christy and not given by Tyler, both of the half-siblings were charged with capital murder based on Tyler's confession for the death of Joey Fulgham. Christy faced the death penalty, and Tyler faced life imprisonment if convicted. A few days later, Tyler reached out to the sheriff's office, giving another statement that his first confession was a lie, and he only said that he pulled the trigger in order to protect his sister. The detectives, however, ignored his second statement and sent the case to court for trial. Tyler Edmonds' trial began on July 20th, 2004.
It was a highly publicized case. It's unusual to have a child that young tried for murder.
Tyler's family and relatives strongly believed that he could never commit such an act and were ready to do whatever was needed to save the boy. Thus, his mother decided to hire Jim Wade as Tyler's attorney.
He has the reputation for being a bear anyway, for just going after it. I knew that if anybody in North Mississippi was going to give Tyler his best chance, it would be Jim Wade.
After doing a thorough study of the case, Jim was convinced that the confession given by Tyler to the detectives was a false one that he'd fabricated in order to save his sister, whom he adored so much. He also knew that Tyler's version of events completely changed once Christy was brought into the interrogation room to talk to him.
Within minutes after she made that statement, Tyler made what was a false confession, saying that he and Christy did it.
The court, however, only focused on Tyler's first confession and ruled out any other theory. There was no recording of the siblings' conversation before Tyler's confession.
Confessions are really, really powerful pieces of evidence. It's a stretch for any of us to think that we would sit there and lie and say we did something we didn't, knowing we'd get in trouble for it. So if you have a confession, coerced, false or not, that's a good piece of evidence.
The forensic pathologist, Dr. Stephen Hain, who was involved in the case, testified that the bullet's trajectory, which was analyzed after examining the crime scene, matched with the initial confession given by Tyler. This testimony, however, raised many eyebrows.
I've gone through it a million times in my head, and there's no logical explanation that would ever be able to explain how the angle of a bullet in someone can 100% be determined that two people were holding that gun. There's no way.
I mean, sounds a little far-fetched, but it was an expert opinion allowed in the trial and could have played a pretty big part in the jury's decision.
The jury deliberated for 5 hours before returning with a verdict. The jury found Tyler Edmonds guilty of murder. On July 24, 2004, the then 15-year-old boy was sentenced to life in prison.
I was so convinced that he was innocent that I was overly confident that he would be found innocent.
After Tyler was sentenced, Jim Wade vowed to appeal. He wasn't ready to give up on Tyler because he believed that Tyler was innocent.
I became convinced that there were so many errors in the trial. I was convinced there were so many errors that surely this would be reversed.
Jim never gave up, kept on fighting even after Tyler was convicted. He told all of us that were there as witnesses, you will be in court again because I'm going to file for a new trial.
Despite his enthusiasm to find the truth, Jim wasn't able to do anything for Tyler. Tyler was locked up at the Walnut Grove Correctional Facility, which was considered to be one of the worst juvenile prisons in the whole nation. Moreover, getting a new trial for Tyler was challenging because in the state of Mississippi, very few convicted murderers get a new trial. And of those, very few get a chance to be freed from the accusations that were placed upon them. But Tyler's family and friends were certain that he would never do such a thing and were praying for him to be released from prison.
He wrote me all kind of letters. I would write him letters. I can remember I took all of his letters and I put them in a Ziploc bag and I buried them somewhere in my yard. And I told him, I said, whenever you come home, we're going to dig up these letters and read them.
Finally, a glimmer of hope emerged in Tyler's life when the Mississippi Supreme Court decided to consider Tyler's case one more time in January of 2007.
All the Fulgham family wanted is just for him to say what had happened. We just wanted closure about what had happened. More so than we cared about, punishing him for the rest of his life.
After a very short deliberation in Tyler's case, the court came back with a unanimous decision overturning Tyler's conviction. They said that they were willing to give him another chance because he didn't get a fair trial. The reason they cited was that the testimony of the forensic pathologist, according to the court, was outside of his area of expertise. The state of Mississippi offered Tyler a plea bargain. If he accepted and admitted to murdering Joey Fulgham, he would serve a drastically reduced sentence. But Tyler rejected it and chose to go with a retrial.
If he had taken the manslaughter plea, he would have been out of jail in just a few months. Whereas if he goes to trial and is convicted, he gets life imprisonment. But that was the strongest indication to me that Tyler was innocent.
Tyler Edmonds' second trial began on October 28, 2008, after 5 long years of waiting. It gave Tyler hope of finally being free and living his life. For his attorney, Jim Wade, however, it was his last shot at redemption.
Every now and then, I've come across an attorney who has been just incredibly emotionally invested in their client. Those kind of attorneys take the verdicts incredibly hard and as personal failures. And I think Jim Wade is one of those. I mean, that conviction was devastating to him.
During the opening statements, Jim was determined to prove that the statement given by 13-year-old Tyler Edmonds was indeed false. One of the witnesses that Jim called to testify was none other than Christy Fulgham, who herself was then serving a life sentence for being involved in the murder of her husband.
I had hoped that she would tell the truth about what had happened after she'd already gotten a life sentence. And I thought, she's got nothing to lose, maybe she'll tell the truth.
Christy Fulgham is called to the stand. She sits down on the witness stand. We're at the edge of our seats.
But the hope that Jim had was short-lived. Jim thought that Christy would testify truthfully because she'd already been convicted of the crime and was facing the death penalty. But he was proven wrong when Christy pleaded the fifth to all questions.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
You may.
Would you state your name, please, ma'am?
Christy Fulgham.
Hey, Miss Fulgham, you're Tyler Edmonds' sister, is that correct?
And she takes the fifth to every question.
On the advice of my attorney, I'm not answering any questions.
But Christy's presence in the courtroom helped Jim to bring out more evidence against her to prove that this whole plan was fabricated by none other than Christy herself.
Why would you put somebody that young in that situation if you had any kind of feelings for them at all? If you had any thought of what it would do to the other person? Why would you do that? I think she was just completely self-serving. I think Christy was out for Christy.
She was trashy, just to be honest with you. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I believe she was just pure white trash.
The court granted permission to Jim to talk about issues that were not brought up in Tyler's first trial. One of these issues was the sour relationship between Joey and Christy, who even appeared on the national television program, The Montel Williams Show, to discuss their marital issues.
You were married for 5 years, right?
Yeah. On The Montel Williams Show, Joey and Christy, aired all their dirty laundry, all her boyfriends, all the infidelities that Joey knew about.
And you took off and moved to Texas.
Yeah.
You went to Texas and one of your friends went along, right?
Yeah.
And I should say that this friend was also the best friend of your husband, Joe.
Yeah.
What happened?
I ended up pregnant with my baby.
It showed the level of manipulation that Christy was capable of, carrying on all these other affairs, some to the knowledge of her husband.
And that didn't tell you maybe it was time to get a divorce?
It did, but I love her.
She was a master manipulator, and that, coupled with the fact that she was not happy being one man's woman, was very important for the defense to show.
More witnesses started to expose who really had the motive to kill Joey Fulgham. Christy knew that Joey had a huge life insurance policy and started to ask around about it.
It would have been probably March or April of 2003. I was at work and received a telephone call from Christy. She asked me about Joey's life insurance policy, how much it was for, who the beneficiary was. I told her that I couldn't tell her because Joey had signed a privacy statement stating that the only person that I could talk to about such documents was Joey himself.
But the witness who solidified the theory that Christy acted alone was her own father, with whom she discussed killing her husband with or without Tyler's help.
Danny Edmonds, Christy's father, is the only person that says she expressed the desire and plan to kill her husband, Joey.
So Christy came to your house, and tell the jury what y'all discussed at your house when Christy came over there.
She asked me for a gun, that she wanted to kill Joey. And I asked her why. And she said he was mean to her and the kids. And I told her, just leave him. And she said, no, he's got a life insurance policy.
Well, did she tell you what you could get out of it?
She was going to buy me a new Cadillac.
A new Cadillac?
As the trial dragged on and the prosecutor came forward to give his arguments, Tyler's own words from the confession came back to haunt him.
What is the truth? That me and Christy did it. Y'all killed him? Did you for real do that? Or are you just telling them that? We did this, Mother. Me and Christy did it.
Oh, it's very powerful. If you throw a confession in there and a jury goes, all right, he confessed to it, so he must be guilty.
The prosecutor stressed the fact that Tyler was indeed responsible for killing Joey Fulgham because there were two people inside Joey's bedroom the night he was murdered.
What the evidence in this case is going to show, ladies and gentlemen, is that there are two people responsible for the killing of Joey Fulgham.
Prosecutor Frank Clark told me that he always wanted to be a prosecutor because those were the good guys to him.
The first is Joey's estranged wife, Christy Fulgham. The second person responsible for the death of Joey is this defendant.
Jim Wade and the defense team really faced this one big hurdle, which is the confession.
Me and Christy did it. Those are this defendant's words, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. They are not mine.
He then brought in the detective who was present in the interrogation room when Tyler was being questioned. It was he who brought in Christy when she wanted to talk to her brother about confessing.
I want you to tell us, as best you can remember, exactly what happened between this defendant and Christy Fulgham when you brought them into the room together.
She walked in and said, Tyler, hold my hand. Said, I have already told them what happened. I told them the truth, and I want you to tell them the truth.
What, if anything, did the defendant say at that point?
He told us that he wanted to tell the truth, that he shot Joey. He wanted to tell the truth, and he wanted to do it without his mother being present because he wanted to tell her after he told us.
Okay.
After that, the court saw the 30-minute-long video where Tyler's confession was recorded. Once it was over, Jim called upon a pathologist to stress the fact that a gunshot wound would not cause blood splatter the way Tyler had explained during the confession.
You have a relatively small hole from a .22, and then the bullet goes in and does this significant damage inside the brain and the bone. But in this kind of a wound, the bleeding doesn't start right away.
There's a discrepancy there between what he says he saw and what the evidence would have looked like.
The crime scene photos supported this testimony since no blood was splattered on the pillow or the walls. Next, Jim pleaded with the court for permission to show the second confession given by Tyler when he was trying to undo the damage he'd created by giving his first confession. According to him, the day after Joey was murdered, Christy and Tyler were planning to go for a picnic along with their children.
I was sitting there messing with the radio, waiting for Kristen, and all of a sudden I just heard this pop. I didn't know what it was. I didn't think anything of it.
Kristen was still in the house. You heard a pop.
I heard a pop. I didn't know what it was.
After driving for a while, she finally revealed to him that she'd killed Joey. She then started to explain to him the plan that he should take the blame for her, since he'd only be sent to the juvenile, while she might get the death sentence. After the video of the second confession was shown to the jury, the prosecutor came forward to give their arguments.
It's not easy to believe that somebody that looks like him committed this crime. There's only one person in this courtroom who is an admitted liar, and that's the person sitting over there in between his two lawyers. His whole defense is, I'm a liar. Folks, somebody who will lie to protect his sister will lie to protect himself.
Finally, Tyler took the stand to narrate his version of what had actually happened on the day of the murder.
Tyler, you were present on the courtroom when a statement you gave to the police is shown to the jury?
Yes, sir.
Did you lie when you gave that statement?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how did you lie?
By saying that I had something to do with the murder of Joey Fulgham.
Why did you lie?
To protect my sister.
Why did she tell you that you had to take the blame for it?
Because nothing would happen to me because I was under 18, and that if I didn't, then they would kill her, and that I would never see her or her kids again.
She indicated to you that you should take the blame. How were you supposed to know what to tell the police?
She told me to say that it was an accident at first. She was sitting on my right, I was on her left, and she reached over like this and said, hold my hand, and I held her hand. And then she said, tell him.
When she told you that, what did you believe she was telling you to do?
That was my cue to go take the blame for it.
At last, it was time for the closing arguments to be presented by both the parties. The prosecutor gave his ending arguments, continuously stressing the fact that Tyler alone was responsible for the murder of Joey Fulgham. When Jim Wade stood to give his closing arguments, everything was at stake, and every person inside the courtroom held their breath to see what the outcome would come out to be.
Is there any physical evidence? Is there anything other than this child's words? Something you know, some objective fact that proves that he's guilty? No, there isn't. Just this child's words. Think about this. This is a 13-year-old child. Is he upset because he killed somebody, or is he upset because for 40 minutes or whatever it is, they have him on tape lying? And his mother comes in, he's tired. He's so tired he can't even stand up. And he's crying and upset. Look at Sharon. Did y'all see how shocked she was? She knows it's unbelievable that her son could do anything like that. The prosecutor made a very emotional argument like he knows what happened. Well, he wasn't there. He does not know what happened. He does not know what happened. It may not be for us to know exactly what happened here, but I do know this. One day we're going to all stand there before God and we're going to give an account. If I were sitting on this jury, I'd a lot rather be up there telling God I voted that child not guilty than telling him I bore false witness against my neighbor.
The trial finally concluded and the wait for the verdict began. It was painful for Tyler as his whole life was at stake at that moment. He later talked about all the emotions he went through during the wait.
I remember sitting outside the courthouse with my mom and just thinking, like, surely there's enough good left in the world. Like, surely there's enough good left in the world. I think it was somewhere around 10 a.m. we get word that the jury reached a verdict. And walking back into that courtroom was, like, emotionally deafening. There were so many emotions.
The jury finally arrived with the verdict, and as it was read aloud, there was a roller coaster of emotions inside the courtroom.
Ladies and gentlemen, have you arrived at a verdict in this case? Would the defendant and his attorney please stand? You may read the verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty.
The jury has returned a verdict of not guilty. You are hereby, and the sureties on your bond, discharged. You may go. Court's in recess.
I can still hear the court clerk's voice in my head. I can still hear her voice as clear as day when she read the verdict and said not guilty. And I remember hearing that and then just wanting to get out of there. I just wanted to leave. That was probably the first time that I just absolutely just like, because it's just the whole weight of the world had just like been lifted off of me. For years, I was just.
Can you talk to us? I'm sorry, I'm just gonna go.
I'm relieved. I've been praying for this for almost 6 years. And it's been torture. I'm just glad that I can move on with my life finally. God is good, and I've prayed till I couldn't pray anymore.
God is great.
And my family and my friends have all supported me, and we prayed for 5 years.
I told Tyler this morning, my life is, coming close to its end, and his is just beginning. So he has all the potential in the world. He thinks about it every day. He wakes up in the morning, think about it. But now that this burden's lifted, there's no telling what this young man will accomplish.
Tyler Edmonds was finally a free man. After 6 years, Tyler could finally walk the streets as a free man. But for the Fulgham family, the whole retrial was like opening old wounds and yet not finding a way to heal them, since they still didn't have closure as to what actually happened to Joey.
It's hard to believe that that verdict would come out. I mean, sitting there during the whole trial, we tried to kind of view the trial as the jury would. There was no doubt in our minds And that was what was so surprising about the whole verdict. The only thing our family has ever wanted to know was the truth. There's no way we can bring my brother back. Joey's dead and gone. We don't want to punish somebody else just to seek revenge. We just want to know the truth.
Now, Tyler has built a new life. He went back to school to get a nursing degree. He left Mississippi and moved to Florida, where he now lives and works.
I left Mississippi because I didn't know where else in Mississippi I could go, where I could be anyone other than the Tyler from 5 o'clock news. I changed. This is what happened with my life, and I needed to figure out who I was. Otherwise, the title, Series of Unfortunate Events, has already been taken.
Even though he's living a happy and flourishing life now, the words he'd spoken back when he was a teenager continued to haunt him, and this whole incident had a lifelong impact on his life.
Children should not be allowed legally to speak to a police officer without an attorney present. Period. I hear some people say without a parent or an attorney, it needs to be an attorney, because even parents don't know how to navigate the system as well. Because like my case, of course, the first several hours were not video camera. The video camera only came on when it was convenient for them. And I think that protects both parties. I think the good way to, common sense, easy way to protect that is to have cameras in an interrogation room, start to finish.
As for Christy, before a murder trial, she was tried, convicted, and sentenced to 12 years in prison for convincing 2 men to help her escape prison. Her trial for the murder of Joey Fulgham began in 2008, where she was convicted and sentenced to death. She appealed, and in 2010, her death sentence was overturned.
The last time I heard from her was December of 2008. There was a letter, and it was an apology letter. She didn't even say what she was sorry for. It literally said, "I'm sorry for ... Well, you know what I'm sorry for." And that just pissed me off. It made me so angry. I was so angry. Like, you wait until 5.5 years, 2 trials later, now you want to say you're sorry?
So now we ask you, do you think Tyler was truly innocent, or was there some truth to his first confession? Why do you think, even after receiving the death sentence, Christy refused to clear Tyler's name from an act solely planned and executed by her? Let us know what you think in the comment section below. And if you found today's video interesting, please consider subscribing to our channel, M7 Crime Storytime, hit that like button, and share our videos. Also, if you have any crime stories that you'd like us to cover, leave us a message in the comment section below.